Well, my good people, before we before we begin, want y'all to prepare your ears to listen and your heart to receive as you take in the words that look to change lives, renew hearts, and open minds. Welcome to the next door to expansion, where I am your host, Anthony Hubbard, the founder and owner of Speak to My Heart Life Coaching. And if anybody don't know, a life coach is a person who partners with clients and asks thought-provoking questions to create a process that will inspire them to maximize their personal and professional potential. So let me introduce my co-host, Miss Stephanie Holmes Passmore, who is a certified marriage and family therapist and the founder of the Narrative Shift LLC, and she can tell you what a counselor is and what they can do for you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Stephanie Hollins Passmore, marriage and family therapist, licensed mental health counselor, sole practitioner for counseling and consultation by the Narrative Shift LLC. I cater to a diverse population in the Pacific Northwest. I help individuals to shift their perspective to engage a more positive outlook, therefore shifting the narrative to how one manages their life stressors that affect their mental health and relationship to others. So that's what I do and what I can do for you.
Sure enough. And today we welcome Mr. Nicholas Hughes, Mr. Hughes that is, and Miss Andrella Pusher to the show. And just to give you a little snippet about these two people, Nick is a retired Navy chief and not cereal that you eat, but serial, meaning multiple entrepreneur that is here to provide his experience in real estate and to give you the best options on purchasing or selling your home during the pandemic and beyond. And then we have Miss Andrella, who is also a retired Navy chief, and she is a serial entrepreneur as well. She has honed her skills of being a naval nuclear engineer into a real estate business, and she'll be sharing with us how she has helped numerous families transition through life to help them understand how to win with where they are. So, my good people, welcome to the Door to Expansion webcast. Mr. Nick,
yes,
what you got?
Thank you for having us. It's an honor and privilege to actually reconnect with you again. Many don't know this, but we actually served time together on USS Moon Bay. So it's a good time to reconnect with each other. So tonight, the topic is simple. We're going to talk about home literacy and real estate. I know a lot of people are affected by the current market right now. People out there actually looking for homes. They're actually losing offers. There are sellers out here that are actually selling their homes for 3 times as much, or they're selling for more than what it would actually suggest pre-COVID, because of COVID. So we just kind of want to go over some things and then some things that can help you better prepare during the home buying and if you're actually selling your property. So if you don't mind, for the audience at home, I'd like for you to take out your calculator and I want you to multiply your rent times 120, so that's 10 years. So if you do that, that pretty much tells you how much money you are giving them in a 10-year period. So if you pay $1,200 a month and you multiply that times 120, you basically give them $140,000, right? In that lifetime, in the time that you've had that, the time that you actually rented. So home ownership, we preach home ownership as a way of having your own equity, your own stake into your own legacy. You're gonna reap the benefits of tax credits. You can go to work and come home every day and just know that your home is appreciated as you're doing daily tasks and just going about your day. Another thing is, I'm getting sidetracked. Sorry about that. I want to make sure hold on. Oh, it's also a wealth builder. So basically, in the grand scheme of things, if you buy your property, you can actually leverage that property to acquire more property. And we can go over that, but that's something that you can also do. And then it also improves your credit. So we always talk about number one, credit, real estate, and then what type of investments we actually hold in, whether it's going to be investment properties, stocks, mutual funds, things of that nature. So it's part of your portfolio, your wealth building portfolio. Real estate is definitely in there, and you have to take advantage of that.
So, Miss Andrella, give you a little time to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the folks. I am a retired chief in the Navy. I was a nuclear engineer. So as you can imagine, I lead my business making sure that people understand the education behind the process, right? Um, in the Navy, one of the things you said was that I honed my skills from the Navy, and I did. And so, I've been fortunate that most of the clients that I've had have been transitioning. A lot of people right now are moving to the South, for reasons like remote work, cheaper property taxes, the schools are finally open, lower cost of living, getting to the beaches. Um, but sometimes they don't really understand what it's like to up and relocate life, right? And in the military, I moved every 3.5 years for 20 years, right? So being able to take what I learned in the military and then unpack that about myself and plug it into my real estate business has been absolutely phenomenal. Home ownership over renting. Home ownership is something that I wish more people really understood the power of at a younger age. If you think most people, once they reach adulthood, right? So let's say legal age of 18, a lot of people in the past weren't buying until their 30s because they couldn't, because of life, maybe early childhood, parenting, or college even. And right now, a lot of people are starting to get into home ownership at a younger age, which means there's going to be a lot more people that are able to pay off a home should they decide to stay in that home and able to leverage everything that goes along with being able to build home ownership, like paying a landlord to pay, to pay off property. It's a beautiful thing to be able to say, this is mine instead of paying for somebody else's dream.
Very true. So with that being said, we're gonna jump into the show. And Nick, he already, he jumped in there and said, he had told you to pull your calculators out and look to find out what the difference is between you renting a place times however long you've been renting that place, and then you work your own numbers out. And so something else that both of y'all kind of touched on are the pros and cons of home ownership versus renting. And a lot of people really don't. A lot of there's. I just give you some things right here. So some of the advantages of home ownership could be it's a good investment. Y'all mentioned that stable housing costs from year to year. That pride that you spoke of. Everybody gonna take a whole lot of pride in their place. You can tell when there's an actual home or association or whatever around you because you see the yards are being kept, everything is manicured, all that, taxes, incentives, and then, but then there's also advantages of renting, and some of those things could be a lower housing cost, which I would say is debatable, shorter term commitment, and then sometimes there's no or minimal maintenance and repair costs because that is being passed on to the landlords. So if we look at the pros of everything, we always have to look at the cons. So some disadvantages for home ownership is the high upfront costs. So we talking about that down payment. We talking about that, and we'll get into a little bit of that maintenance costs. You got to factor that in there. The property values may fall, and you're being less mobile, meaning you just can't pick up your stuff and then just roll out like if you was just renting the place because now you got to sell and all the other good stuff. But the disadvantages of renting could be the ability to change the property. You probably want to put a deck on the back. It ain't yours to put a deck on the back. So, so rent may increase, no credit score improvement. We talked about finances a little last week, and your credit score is still gonna remain the same unless you ain't paying that monthly, and then you aren't building any personal value. It's not yours. So as we look at some of that, let's just jump right into it and say, let us know how the process begins. Let's take people from day one. Who do they need to talk to?
Okay, so it's a lot to unpack right now. So number one, it usually takes a person 2 years if they don't have everything in order to be able to get to the point where they're ready to purchase, right? We did a study, I used to teach a class, and I would have like a group of 10 people, and I always say, when I would say to the class, hey, 2 people right now are ready to go. They're pre-approved. They're ready to go. They're pre-approved. They have some money. They have some equity, whether it's a 401k, IRA, TSP. They have some money to show, and they can start the process right now. You have 3 that may or may not. They have a couple things they have to work on, but once they get those things ready, then they can go move forward towards the approval. Then the other 5 are just not going to do anything. They're just there for the information. They're keep going around in a circle. They don't know what they want to do, and they're listening to everybody else. So I say the first thing is for anyone, before you get started, make a decision, right? Have that expectation, right, for yourself and say, hey, listen, this is what I want to do. I want to move forward. I want to become a homeowner, and I need to seek out the information towards home ownership. Now, when you go seek out this information, you can't go talk to your cousin, right? You can't go talk to mom and dad who bought a house 15 years ago. You can't go talk to your best friend who bought a new construction 4 years ago or 6 months ago, because the market is constantly changing. And I think that's a lot of times when people get discouraged because they get so much information from so many people, they don't know how to digest it. And then they just say, you know what, I'm just going to stay back, and then I'll continue to do what I'm doing. So the first thing is you want to talk to a lender, right? The lender controls the money. I don't care if you have bad credit. I don't care if you had a bankruptcy. I don't care if you had a foreclosure. I don't care if you did a short sale. You need to talk to a lender. And you need to talk to a lender that's going to work with you, because the lender controls the money, right? A lender's going to tell you, hey, your credit card is this. I need you to pay it down to this. Hey, you have this. I need you to pay it down to that. Hey, I need you to pay this off. I need you to pay off that loan. I need you to get your car note down here, or you need to refinance your car. They're going to tell you exactly what you need to do. And if you can follow directions, they're going to give you the money. I mean, it's just as simple as that. It's not as hard as people think. Now, I know there's some common misconceptions. People think that you need a 700 credit score in order to purchase a property. I'm going to tell you right now that it's false. I've seen people with 700 credit scores, higher than 700 credit scores, and couldn't get approved for $150,000. I've seen people with 620 credit scores and get approved for $400,000. So, and the reason being is because of debt to income. And what debt to income is basically how much money you got going out versus how much money you got coming in per month. So you can have a 750 credit score, but if all your cards are almost maxed out, and that's revolving credit, you got 2 card notes, you have a personal loan, and you're barely have enough money at the end once you pay everything off, the bank is going to say you're high risk. Yes, you have a high credit score, but you're high risk. Now, this person may have had, the person with the 620 may have said, okay, listen, he had a problem or she had a problem, right? They were able to rectify, pay everything off, and they just have a low credit score, and it's just timing, right? It's just because of time, and it'll come up eventually, but they'll give them the loan. This is facts. And the crazy thing is, when I see people and they be like, well, oh, my credit score is this. And I just be like, okay. I always say, okay. Until you talk to a lender, it doesn't matter what you say, right? Or let's say you go to Credit Karma, right? You go to Credit Karma because you believe that Credit Karma is the end all be all. A lot of people do this. And then when they get to the lender, their score is a 40 point difference. And they're trying to figure out, like, wait a minute, Credit Karma told me my credit score was a 650, but you got me down here as a 600 or a 589. Well, because when you're going for a home loan, that algorithm is a lot harder. They're going to take the eight hardest part of that algorithm, and they're going to plug it in to look at all the determining factors to give you that loan. So a lot of people don't know that. So talking to the lender is going to be your first step. That's the first step. Once you talk to them and you find one that you can work with, that's money. Next, you want to do a budget. Now, go back to the lender. If you are married, they're going to take the lowest credit score. So your wife got a 700, you got a 600, they go on with the 600 because the bank got to make money. The lender has to make money. They have to make money, right? Next, budget. I preach this. If I do a buyer presentation with anyone that's purchasing a home, first thing we're talking about is a budget. I'm sending you a budget, a dream sheet, and we do the appointment. If you do not do the budget, we are not having an appointment. I'm not wasting my time. And the reason why is because a lot of people don't talk about their money. They don't put their money on paper, right, and see where their money is going, right? So I always like to tell people this: listen, if you don't know where your money is going, you don't have a plan to follow. You gotta have that plan to follow. So even if you put all your debts down, you print up your last 3 months, your last 90 days of bank statements, and you go through it. We all lose 20% of our income. I don't care who you are, you lose 20% of your income. You go to Starbucks, you go buy food out the vending machine, you like to go to Applebee's. When you get paid, hey, you wanted a fresh pair of J's, that's 20%. That's the 20% you didn't count for, and you're gonna lose that. You gotta find out where your money's at. That's the whole purpose of the budget. Now, when the lender look at your credit, they're gonna look at the history, 12 months of credit history. So as long as you're good within the last 12 months, you're keeping your debt to income down low, you shouldn't have a problem getting a loan. Next, you're gonna find a lender, an agent or a realtor, right? And with that, you want someone that's gonna explain that process to you. It doesn't have to necessarily be no one that you know, but you want to interview agents. It's okay to interview a realtor. You can interview them. You can have those hard questions, and they should be. And a good realtor will make sure that you do a buyer presentation so they can explain the entire process to you. It shouldn't just be like, oh, I can get you pre-approved. Oh, let's go look at some houses, and you have no idea what any of this stuff is, right? You want them to be able to explain to you what exactly the process, the difference between banks and lenders, what to know, how much money to have. They should be able to explain that. And they should have a presentation to sit down with you. And that's just to get started, right? And it's not overwhelming because it's all the process is intertwined with each other. So it's not like, well, I got to do this. Okay, check. Now I got to go do that. No, it's all part of the process. So if you can follow directions, I promise you'll become a homeowner. If you can pay rent, you definitely can pay a mortgage. Because most of the times what you're paying for rent, you're probably paying more than what you would have if you was paying an actual mortgage. And I think that's the misconception. So I know you laid out a lot of pros when it comes to actually renting, but look at it this way. If I'm paying $1,200 a month, right? I'm paying $1,200 a month for rent. I turn around, I get a mortgage for $850. I can invest that $350. I can invest that. That money is my money to do whatever. I can invest that. I can put that in a mutual fund. I can put it back into my mortgage on a principal and pay down my principal. I have money for leverage. I could do something with that money. And I think a lot of times people mess up with that. Now, there is a cost of ownership when buying a house. There is a cost of ownership. Yes, you got to make sure your yard is clean. Yes, you have to maintain your HVAC. So you have to get those services twice a year. Yes, you got to do periodic maintenance on your water heater, drain it. Make sure, there's things that you have to do. But the long term, I kept my house for 5 years. It goes up $80,000. I get to sell my property. I get to take my profit and I can go invest it in something else. Vice, I paid rent for 8 years.
And the only thing I'm taking with me is my suitcases.
I get my security deposit back if the house is restored. You see what I'm saying? I may get my security deposit back. I might not get it back. They charging me for things that, I know it's normal wear and tear, but the landlord's gonna charge me. He took your security deposit, he indexed it, so he made some money off of that. Now he can pay you out your $1,200 and keep the money he made off the capital gains. That's what I would do. I mean, this is what it is.
Yeah. So Andrella, whenever somebody is coming and talking to you, what do you have them consider whenever they going to look for these homes?
Good question. One, are they emotionally ready for it, right? Because a lot of people that say they want to buy are not emotionally ready, because it definitely is a journey, right? Sometimes people that come my way don't have a lender, right? And because, just like you said, people won't talk about their finances, I make sure that they understand that, listen, you are about to have a conversation with the lender who is going to get all up in your financial business. But that's what they're supposed to do. They're about to loan you the biggest financial, piece of chunk of money that you're probably going to get in your entire life. Next to raising children, our houses are probably the biggest expense of our lives. You know, so I make sure that they're actually prepared for that, and a lot of people do look at things like Credit Karma and Experian.com, all sorts of things. So I make sure that they understand what that mortgage calculator looks like, as well as the fact that the software that the banks use is different from what they'll see online. A lot of lenders will say, take a look at myfico.com instead of Credit Karma. And it's because if you're looking at a car loan, they get one number. If you're looking at a mortgage loan, they get another one. If you're looking at it just for yourself, it's totally another one. And until you can get one that's as close to what the mortgage loan officers see, you're going to be off by at least 20 to 40 points, just like Nick said, easy, hands down. And sometimes it can be a shocker, right? So I tell people, as a realtor, houses really do sell themselves. People pick their own house. We're really there to manage expectations, educate, empower, and help solve problems. The biggest thing that I would tell anybody, right, after you have that first conversation with yourself, am I ready for this process, is to make sure they understand you get the money and then you go look for the house. A lot of people feel like, oh, well, let's go look at some houses. Absolutely not. We are not going into houses until you get pre-approved, because here's what happened. A person could fall in love with the house, and then they go to the bank, and the bank says, we're not going to finance that amount. We're actually going to finance, only $50,000 lower. And then lo and behold, they fell in love with something that they can't afford. Or they could be, on the flip side, willing to sacrifice and look at a lower value house and just settle when their money, their credit income could actually get them, closer to what they're looking for. It's important for people to understand you get the money first, and then you start looking at the houses. Once you get that pre-approval, I don't show my clients houses without pre-approvals. We are in COVID times, and just to minimize exposure to everything that's going on in the world, not just the emotional side of what happened with the home buying journeys, just to make sure that they're very clear. It's like going to the mall and you want XYZ, but you don't know how much money you have. That never makes sense, right? When you go into the jewelry store to go buy some jewelry, you know what your budget is. So when you get ready to start looking at houses, it's imperative to understand how much money can you shop with. And you're not going to know that until you get with the lender and then get ready. I would say out of 10 people that say, well, listen, I'm ready to buy a house, typically 2 are ready to go. Typically 2 out of 10 can pull together their documents. The lenders are going to look at things like tax statements, job income, your debt to income ratio, your credit scores. They're going to look at all those financials and put them together and say, 1, you're ready, or 2, you're not. Right? Either you're ready or you're not. 2 out of 10 people are ready. And then out of that group that's not ready, if you've got a good lender, they'll give you a game plan on what to do. One other thing, just to tap on what Nick was talking about, is credit repair. Sometimes people feel like, well, you know what, I want to buy a house and my credit score is only, 620. Well, let me pay a credit repair company to get my credit together. Their income is great. Their debt income is fine, but the credit score is a little bit lower because life happens, right? Life happens. It's just a matter of what it is and when it happens. Talk to a lender. Don't just go pay somebody to have a bunch of stuff removed, because that may not be what needs to happen in order to buy a house.
Absolutely.
So you got to talk to that lender, and that lender says yes, no, maybe so. Most lenders will always give you a game plan to say, hey, either you're ready, good, check, here's your pre-approval, and if you're not, hey, let's game plan this out for the next 3 months or the next 6 months, and pay this off, pay this down. They have these templates that'll tell people exactly what they need to do. Because a lot of times it's not get this hard inquiry removed off, or get these 10 things removed off your credit. That's not going to affect your worthiness, credit worthiness, getting ready to buy a house. So you always talk about the money first, and then you start talking about the house. You got to get crystal clear on where your money stands.
So, and let's break it down a little bit further, because y'all keep saying lender, a lender. Who are the lenders? Who do these people need to look to?
All right. Oh, go
So
ahead.
Nick said you talk to the lender and then you talk to the realtor. I say you talk to yourself and get clear first. And this might just be the coach in me, it might be the woman in me, it might be the mom in me. You got to get clear with who you are and what you're willing to go through first. Um, Most people do not want to find financial help in people that they don't know anything about. So a lot of people actually go seek out a realtor first. Most realtors have lenders in their Rolodex, in their phone that they can say, you know what, I've done some phenomenal business with this person. I like the way that they took care of my clients. Here's 3 to 5 people. Interview them. Not just go work with them, but interview, because it has to be a really good fit. It has to be somebody that you can trust and that can do what you need them to do. So just like you interview realtors, you interview lenders. You know, when you're talking about lenders, you're not just talking about Chase, Wells Fargo, banking institutions. You're also talking about those individual lenders and brokers that, you know, can service a home loan.
What were you gonna say, Nick?
Oh, I was gonna piggyback off of. I pretty much was gonna say what she was saying, but yeah, and I'm glad you clarified that up about the lender going to see the lender, but actually talking to an agent. So yeah, it's pretty much the same thing.
Okay then.
And most
So
of the time, aren't these consultations free? I mean, you're not
Yeah,
paying
they
for
don't
this
cost
service.
nothing.
Yeah.
Actually, as a buyer, okay, so right now in today's market, because it's been shift, right? We're talking right now today. That's why when Nick said, don't talk to your parents that bought a house 15 years ago, things change all the time, right? Most contracts are written when a person is selling a house, that seller is paying the agent fees on both sides. So as a buyer, your agent is being paid by the seller. Why wouldn't you get good representation? So as a buyer, you need an
Absolutely.
advocate who's going to work for you. So it's super important to make sure that when you're interviewing lender or when you're interviewing realtors, you're interviewing somebody that's actually going to work hard for you, and it's no cost. There's no cost to talk to a realtor, to have that person work the deal for you when you're buying a home, and then when you're going to purchase a home, those lender interviews, those lender consultations, even to get started, is no cost. The costs don't start until you're actually in the transaction, and then we'll kind of talk about what some of those costs look like. Because a lot of people think, oh, I gotta have $50,000 to buy a house. Well, it depends on the cost of the house and depend on what those fees are. But upfront, to have those conversations and to get your questions answers is free of cost.
Gotcha. And I'm glad y'all cleared that up because, of course, whenever we start talking about housing, we start talking about money. So I know, Angela, you have mentioned a couple of things during this time, this COVID time period, as far as uh, the open houses and stuff like that. What else have y'all noticed during this COVID time period as far as the realtor market?
Whew, that's a whole nother conversation. That's a big conversation, right? One of the things that I think probably
Mm.
is the loudest, the elephant in the room, is right now what's going on with prices. And it's because in real estate, there's something just like in any business, there's a supply and demand. Right now, we're in what's called the seller's market. Inventory is low, like low, low. January of last year in the Charleston market, we had about 4,000 houses on the market. Right now, we have less than 1,400, and an influx of people moving into the area. So when you hear people say, man, I'm like right now in our market, we have a lot of cash buyers that are moving to the area. We have a
Mm,
lot of people that are relocating, like places from California, um, or Massachusetts, where they sold a home and they can come down here and buy houses cash. And so for the folks that are down here trying to buy a home and finance it, 250,000 or 200,000, they're having a rough time because it is a seller's market. Sellers aren't paying some of those costs that they used to pay to help buyers for closing, right? And because the supply is so low, it's driven up the prices pretty high right now. And then COVID actually caused the cost of labor to go up. So new construction houses also went up as well. You know, and as a result, when you talk about supply and demand on the housing side, because housing prices went up, right? And apartments are in the state of doing business, right? So they realize people always need a place to stay. So the cost of housing went up, so did the cost of rent.
Mm.
And the requirements.
And the
The requirements are more strict.
down here, you gotta have like places, especially these newer places. We got a ton of places being built down here. They want you to have 3 times the income to rent. If you can have 3 times the income to rent, you can
Buy a house.
You can buy a house.
Let me go do construction loan.
Yeah, and so they're taking advantage of the fact that some people just aren't credit ready, right? Some people just aren't financially ready, and they're making them pay real hard. So the seller's market has been tough. It's been tough for a lot of people. You know, a lot of people are talking about the bad stuff that happens in a seller's market on social media. Social media brings a highlight to a lot of uncomfortable conversations, you know. But the tides are shifting. We're going to go back to a buyer's market, and you know, then it'll be rough on the other side. But right now, the inventory has been super, super, super low, you know, compared to what it was pre-COVID.
And it's the same out here in Hampton Roads. I mean, like literally, like last year, 2021, in 2020 we had 6,820 homes on the market that were active listings. Right now we have a little bit over 3,500 homes. Right, so that inventory is low, and then you factor in, you know, you got a high populated area, military, the largest naval base here, right? So you have other industries here, right? So it's getting real. It's so competitive to where the loans actually matter at this point. So if you're carrying a VA loan, right, or an FHA loan, and someone's carrying a conventional loan, guess what? They're going to give it probably 9 times out of 10 to that conventional buyer. The reason why they're going to give it to that conventional buyer because they can bypass a lot of the things that are requirements for the FHA or VA. Not to say that the price of the house is not adequate, but they just know with a conventional, all they have to do is meet the appraisal. Where if you have a VA or FHA, it's a little bit more requirements, right? It's a little bit more things that have to be done. And if the house doesn't appraise, that's the big thing. If the house doesn't appraise for the value that they're trying to sell it at, then that contract has to be renegotiated, right? And they could actually lose that deal. If they don't have an escalation clause and they say that, hey, we're going to pay this price, even though the house doesn't appraise for that, you're not going to get approved. Like that's some of the things that's going on right now. And sellers, I mean, to be honest with you, this is just because there's a moratorium out. There's a foreclosure freeze, right? There's a renter freeze. So over 10 million homes are technically affected by this right now. So the banks can't foreclose on them. We won't know till June 30th if they're going to even start this process or if they're going to extend it to 2022. No one knows. But just because the prices of homes if it has increased and buyers are still out looking, didn't mean that the listings were gonna, continue to grow. Like the real estate market actually grew during COVID because people were still out looking for homes, even though, there weren't no homes available because everybody wants a deal. So if you say, hey, I put my house in forbearance, right? You didn't pay no mortgage. The bank still charge you interest. They still put it on your credit report. And they did it in increments of 3 months. And then they try to put in for a loan modification. And if you couldn't get that loan modification, they're just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen if they can actually move in and start their foreclosure process. So a lot of people, if they don't have nowhere to rent, because out here rent is tight too, like Andrella was saying, it is 3 times as much as the rent. And then what's actually is available is kind of scarce as well. And landlords are taking extra precautions because they don't want people in their homes that can't pay the rent because it affects them. If they have a mortgage, it affects them. So it's a lot going on. It's a lot of moving parts. And this is where the expertise comes in and to be able to sit down and explain and say, listen, okay, if we come in with this, you may have to bring some more money to closing. You may have to pay for closing costs because it's optional for a seller to pay for closing costs, right? We out here, they're now experiencing, hey, you got to come to the table with some closing costs. In California, you just don't even waste your time. If you don't have pros and cons, don't waste your time. But out here, they kind of experience like, wait a minute. And now people are like, hey, I'm gonna give you $20,000. I don't care if the house don't appraise. I'm gonna give you the 20 grand and pay for closing. Right? This is happening right now, right? And they're waiving home inspections. Like, I don't need a home inspection. I'll do the home inspection, but it's for informational purposes. Wait a minute. You're doing a home inspection, right? It's to no liability to the brokerage. If something happens to the house, the brokers are not held liable for that. So, I mean, people have to understand that. So, yes, you're entitled to a home inspection, but if you waive it and something comes up on his house,
that's all
it's on
you.
you. It's on you. So there's a lot going on, but is it still a good time to buy? Absolutely, because interest rates are historically low. I mean, there was one time the interest rate was, for one day, it was like at 1.9%. Like, that's unheard of.
Yeah.
So right now, interest rates are like under 3%. Unlike people been getting in and they've been able to afford homes at a fixed rate. Like, yo, it's worth the gamble. It's definitely worth the gamble.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was you basically be able to segue to my next question to Andrella whenever we talk. So it's a two-part question for you. So is there such thing as affordable housing in your opinion? And then two, what about people who is, I guess, low to medium income? Is there different programs out there to help them out?
Affordable housing, that's a hard one to answer, because income numbers can really change. Right now here in the South Carolina market, Charleston specifically where I'm at, there's a lot of big industry that's moving into the area. So we're struggling with affordable housing. Affordable housing being, a person that's making minimum wage or slightly over minimum wage can actually afford. And that's becoming a thing of the past. And like I said, these the landlords for rent are starting to require 3 times the amount. And it's hard. Is it a good time to buy? Yes, because rates are historically low. I don't know, at one point I remember reading, like, when was the last time mortgage rates were this low? I just don't remember off the top of my head, but it's historically low. Like, numbers just don't get this low for the loan. So the cost of borrowing money is super cheap right now compared to what it was pre-COVID, right? So if it costs you less to borrow the money to buy a home, that's what's causing many people to be able to buy. So even though people are losing their jobs, and, for a lot of white collar jobs, people were getting laid off and they didn't know the long-term status of the jobs because of job freezes and stuff like that. Even though those type of things were happening, because the rates were so low, people were still purchasing. There's a program, phenomenal program, NACA, NACA.com. I've had a client go through the NACA program, and I have several clients in the middle of their program, right? Remember Nick talked about the different types of loans. He talked about FHA, conventional VA loan. Well, there's also house buying programs, and NACA is one of those. Their interest rate is dirt cheap, but they're not a traditional lender, right? It's a nonprofit organization nationwide, so you can go through NACA anywhere in the country. But NACA typically focuses on sometimes people that have the lower income, but there's no income restriction and there's no credit restriction. So you can have a 580 credit score. NACA will loan you to buy a house based on your income and the other things. They do not harp on the credit. Right, NACA.com. So one of the phenomenal things about NACA is they don't just, hey, give me your financials and let me teach you, or let me lend you the money. They actually teach you about credit. They teach you about budgeting. There's several workshops you have to go through. So they lean real heavy on the education side before they actually give the homeowner, the upcoming homeowner, that loan to finance through.
Is that specifically for first-time buyers, or?
You do not have to be a first-time home buyer in order to go through the NACA program, right? You do not. But again, when you go through this program, they fund your house. And one of my clients, she was able to purchase a house newly renovated in the last year and a half. One of the things we talked about was how this COVID affected the housing market. But down here, houses are typically lasting about 2 days on the market before they're under contract.
How many?
2 days on the market.
Yeah, I was about to say my here
2
too.
days on the market. So you put a house on, you put it out to the public and say, hey, this house is available. Next door neighbor, a day and a half. Cash offer, right? They're relocating from out of the area, but my client was able to, using the NAC program, she would be considered lower income, not because she used the NAC program, that's just her story, right? But we were able to get her into a phenomenal home that had just recently been renovated the day it hit the market. We took a look at that. But again, when you have a realtor that is working for you, right, that leads with that education piece, that cares about you, the client, more than the transaction, they'll make sure that you get educated and get the needs of what you need, not just making sure that you get a house at any cost, right? Because those $20,000 over, for some people, it's going to bite them a couple years down the line. Like I said, a lot of my clients have relocated to the area. So imagine a military person, right? Let's say we buy a house because we know that it's financially smart and we're only going to be in the area for 3 years, or a civilian that's only going to be in the area for 5 years. If you overpay $20,000 for the house, when it's time for you to resell, when you want to relocate, some of those people are not even going to be able to afford to sell their houses because they haven't recouped that extra $20,000 or $25,000 that they paid simply because they wanted to, instead of waiting to get something that actually has needs and was best for their needs, instead of spending that extra $25,000 just because of a want.
I personally experienced that myself when I purchased my house down here in Tennessee. The house, this was 3 years ago, and the houses were moving just like that down here. And I was that person. I was working with my agent, and we go and look at these houses, and I fall in love with the house. Well, whenever it's time for us to go in there, it was 7 people that already bidded on the house. And I didn't understand because I didn't get that education that you're speaking of. And it was like, she said, okay, then we just throw numbers out there. The house was 200,000. And I said, well, I want this house so bad that I'll put 210 on here. And she said, well, all the houses in the neighborhood are only valued at 180. So right now, this house right here is overpriced in this neighborhood. So if you go in there and put an extra, your extra money on there, you the one losing money. And until she told me that, I was like, oh, okay, then that's how it works. So, like I was saying, having that education up front before you go, like you said, go in there and get your heart broken, looking at this nice house and not understanding how much money you really have to afford, you like you said, you're screwing yourself in the long run. So I think that's some great wisdom right there, not to show a house. And like you said, the houses are moving so fast. So if you're not prepared, you just sitting up there doing all this for nothing. It's just like me going to the car lot. I know I really want this car, but I'm not financially prepared to go and get this car. So what's the purpose of me going out there? Like they say, I guess it's going window shopping.
Yeah, just like Nick said, it's important to do a budget to make sure what your right now finances look like and what they can afford. It's also important to get clear on what your long-term goals are.
True.
Right? Because some people, the military, remember I told you that moving all the time, I moved into every location knowing what my exit strategy was. Some people don't have to leave, so they don't have to worry about it, right? But most people don't buy homes to live in for 30 years. Some people are a young couple that hasn't started to grow their family yet. And because the houses right now are so going so fast, a lot of people are resorting to townhomes. And not that there's anything wrong with townhomes, but let's say you already know you want to start a family in the next year or two, you're going to outgrow that townhouse. So we're looking at today. What's your goals for a house? What is it that you need in the house for the next few years? Because you're going to make a huge investment. Let's say you want to buy another house or move from a townhouse to a house 5 years down the line. People need to be educated because it is a lot of moving parts.
I was writing this. I don't know how many people have ever heard of. We always talk about goals, and especially being a life coach, I harp on goals all the time. But the term SMART goals, and some people who know what it is, it'd be like, oh yeah, I've heard that term, and other people don't even never heard that term, but use it in a daily fashion. So the term SMART: specific, measurable, attainable. When I messed my own self. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and then time based. So whenever you look at your goals, whenever you start putting your goals out there, you just had a perfect example. You already started looking whenever you go to that next place. What's my exit strategy out of there? So in the next 2 to 3 years, where do I want this property to be at? And you make goals to set it up that way. So if you go in there purchasing the home at the 2 year mark, this right here need to be fixed. This need to be fixed. I need to work on this right here. I need to contact the realtor and just say, hey, look, what's the market looking like? What's the perfect time for me to put this on the market? So you already got the goal set, which, it goes back to the proper planning stuff, which a lot of people, I don't really think that they get that, and they don't understand how planning really helps you out in this process right here, because you just so wrapped up in the fact that I got to get this new home. It's good for us. I got a growing family, and yes, I do want to get out of this apartment, or I do want to get out of renting. But are you prepared? And so, right now, I think this is why this show right here is much needed, to tell people, hey, there is a process, and the fact that y'all mentioned. What did y'all say the timeline was for a person to actually be ready to start?
It's about 2 years.
2 years. So, I mean,
2 years.
And the normal person, I wouldn't have thought that. I would have just been like, you know what? I know I can't drop down one day and be like, I'm going to go buy a house. I know I ain't going to be able to do that. But you going having financial classes, having your budget all together, now you working that goal right now. So I mean, I think that's good money right there.
Yeah, and likewise, and another thing, like social media, it'll fool and trick you. So I'm gonna tell the people out there, do not compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 12, because you don't know what that person went through to achieve what they had. That was their season. Right, everybody comes into their season. If you're working towards it, you're gonna come into your season. Right? I get that all the time. People be like, "Well, I don't want to start a house." I had somebody say, "I'm embarrassed about my house. I don't like where my house looks." Dude, you got 50 grand worth of equity in this little house that you're talking about. You're embarrassed about. What are you talking about? I had to check him. Do you know there's someone right now that would kill to have your house that you want to put on the market? You're getting ready to buy a bigger home, right? But you had to start here. And you're walking away with over 50 grand in your pocket towards your new home. What are you talking about?
And is there really such thing as a starter home?
I mean, let me say it like this. People think that they should automatically, immediately jump into the big house. Yes, there's such thing as a starter home. You get what you can afford, right? You may not be able to afford a $400,000 or $500,000 home again, but maybe you can afford this $100,000 home. Maybe you could do a little work to it, a little sweat equity, you get it up to, and the market continues to appreciate. You're paying it down, and it's appreciating. Guess what? Now you get it up to 175, 180. You sell that. You're making a little bit more money. Your wife making a little bit more money. Y'all made some good financial choices. Now you can upgrade to the home that you want. People do it all the time. You just got to get in. I think that's why everybody mess up at. They have a hard time understanding how somebody did something. They want to know what somebody did it, and when you tell them what you did, then I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Well, when I do mine, I will do this. Bro, everything is a process. Like, you have to understand that this is a process. So if you can't get the big house right now, get something. I had people that, they may have bought a condo and now they have another home and this condo is just income. I had people that do that. When we paid the condo, we only paid $80,000 for it. We paid it off in 7 years. We just doubled up because the mortgage wasn't nothing. So we paid it off for 7-8 years. And then we just bought another house. And now that's just pure income. It's pure income. I have people right now that's I'm trying to find a commercial lending because they want to build a real estate. They have an understanding. They don't want 1 or 2 homes. They want a real estate empire. Okay, we don't need to talk about residential no more. We need to start breaking into commercial lending and commercial funding so you can buy your 20, 30, so you can have a blank portfolio so you can buy 20, 30 properties per year. Right? Like, that's what it's about, but everyone has to start somewhere. They didn't wake up and say, listen, I got a bunch of money, I'm just going to go through it. No. They have to start somewhere. I mean, that's you.
Yeah, right.
Big money. You know what I mean? Big money. The big money. That ain't everybody's story. But I'm just saying, right? I know, like, in my old neighborhood, and I used to say this all the time, like, dang, I wish I would have bought some of these 3 flats, these 2 flats. They were like 17, 20,000. I was like, yo, I could pay that on cash. I'd be like, I'm not doing that. Because I don't know. No, I know that neighborhood. Right? I'm so far removed from everything. I ain't like, man, I can give somebody a chance. Yeah, I know they're gonna tear it up. I'm just gonna write it off anyway. But I could have bought some stuff over it. I didn't do it. Right? And now people are coming in and they buying it. And they're buying it because they like, oh, this is steal. So what you may think is trash, what you may see every day, like, what's this and that? Why would you want to buy anything over it? Because it's a gold mine. Because you don't value it, somebody else will value it. Yeah. So we talk about buying back the block and, listen, if grandma left you a house, if granny left the family house, granny and papa left the family house, you don't sell the house to buy a car.
Why not?
You don't do that. Because that doesn't make sense.
Hey, I need a new Cadillac, man.
I understand. You don't sell the house. You pay the taxes on the house. You don't use the house on the tax lien because don't nobody want to pay taxes. Y'all can all put y'all money together and pay taxes. Or because somebody's staying there and you upset because they're staying there. No, the whole object is to keep the property in the family. All right? I mean, this is a story of our lives. Like, man, my own family personally, right? My great granddad had an abundance of land. He had over 200 acres. He lost it. He passed away. Something happened. They lost the land. Like, dude, how does that happen? How does it happen?
Lack of education.
Hey, hold on. Y'all just led me to my next segue. And the question to y'all, and this is all 3 of y'all, because we should have had to wrap it up in a minute. But do y'all think that stuff like this should be a subject taught in school?
Absolutely.
And whenever I say this subject, I'm talking about home ownership. I'm talking about just financial management all across the board. I mean, I understand
I said in generational wealth.
Yeah. I mean, I understand English is very important. I understand math is very important. But for me to get through calculus and all these other subjects and underwater basket weaving, I mean, come on. What do y'all think about this dynamic that we don't have in the school system?
So, because the school curriculum is the way that it is, right? There are ways to live it. Let me tell you. One of the things that I was part of, when I lived in Virginia, there's an organization called Black Brand. It's actually the Black Business Chamber of Commerce in the Hampton Roads area. I still sit on the board. I love what I do. That when I left and relocated, I didn't step down from the board. I love what I do there, right? We saw the need for entrepreneurship to be taught into the high school. Because the high schools don't have the space in the curriculum, what we did is we partnered with school districts and we figured out how to work entrepreneurship into some of those extra credit classes. So as a nonprofit, you can actually infiltrate the schools and work with schools to come up with a curriculum, right? And then there's sources for grant money that will help the funding to actually pay for this. Down here we have, but it's an organization. You won't see it come from you won't see it come from the school level. You see it outside school curriculum. See the need and go into the school and place it into the school. So it's possible to do it. You know, we can talk about that next week because we're going to be talking again next week. I'm sure we'll be talking about how to break into investing and things of that sort. But all three of those topics, generational wealth, you know, credit, finances, entrepreneurship, home ownership, those are definitely skills. In the next 5 to 10 years, I think more high schools are going to start putting this in, right? If you look at the way millennials are operating right now, millennials are able to pick up and move jobs every 6 months to a year. And they're doing well because they've learned how to unpack life skills. And they're taking those soft skills with them along the way, right? It's not so much, well, how much experience do you have here? They've learned, you know, and jobs have learned that, hey, listen, I'm going to onboard you and teach you what I need you to learn anyway. So do you have the soft skills to be able to come in and do what I need you to do? And I think in the high school and the middle school levels, even in elementary schools right now, they're starting to teach resilience and soft skills at the elementary school level. It's just a matter of time before, you know, middle school and high school levels start to catch on. But as nonprofits, you can definitely go into the school and start to teach them.
I think one thing that I do is I think it starts at home first. Like I understand in school, but I think it's the real tasking starts at home. So like one of the things that we do with our kids is we talk to them about money. We talk to them about investment. I remember Brooklyn walking up to me. She was like, "Daddy, how do I invest my money?" Because she always gets they love holding on to their money. They like, well, my daughter, she does like the make it rain thing. But she just came to me one day like, "Daddy, I want to know how to invest my money." I'm like, okay, cool. And I set her down and I was showing her, listen, you can set up a custodial IRA for her, right? I'm the custodian for it, but she gets to put her little money in it, but I really put the money in it. And then she can buy her stocks, she can buy ETFs, and at 18, it'll turn over to her. I think one of those things that we don't talk about in the house is because most people, when they see their parents, they just see their parents working or complaining about paying bills. No one ever sits down and say, listen, we're going to take this money, we're going to put it over here. If you want this, you have to work for this. This is how credit works. This is why you pay your taxes. You know, just because you're not an entrepreneur, you don't have a business, don't mean that you can't have a successful financial portfolio, right? You can talk to your kids about that. School, yes, and it should be in school as well, right? School should be teaching this. You know, I know they teach home ec. I know back in high school they had all kind of workshops. Yeah, because we were talking about that the other day. My son said he didn't want to go to college. He wanted to be a mechanic. I wasn't upset with him. He said, I don't want to go to college. I said, okay, fine. Because I understand that everyone who goes to college don't make a big income. And he like, well, you make a bunch of money. I'm going to make money. So, and I'm like, I can't argue with that. You know what I mean? So he like, well, I want to be an auto mechanic. I said, well, listen, if you want to go to school to be a mechanic, guess what? Daddy gonna pay for it. Like daddy fronting the bill because he don't want you to have no debt. Like period. Like, that's just how it works. So I do believe that it should start at home. I believe that people should be more direct about their finances and not the struggling part of the finances, because that's what most people get, right? And because it's not taught at home, and this is a big thing, I'm gonna say this, and I don't want nobody to get offended. Stop kicking our young black boys out of the house at 18 or 21 years old when they're clearly not ready to leave the house. If you haven't given your son that financial back end, if you haven't taught them life lessons, do not kick them out the house, because what you're going to do is force them to do some things and that they're not accustomed to, and they might screw themselves over. Like, just because a young adult reaches 18 does not mean that they still don't require life skills. Period.
Well, Nick, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, what if that person don't have life skills to teach them?
That's a good point.
But
that's a good point,
but,
and I agree with that.
Hey,
I'm go ahead.
Hey, we're gonna come back next week, and we can that could be one of those topics next week.
We're gonna get into that because I'll just say this. Because 18 for me personally, right? Now my mom to this day, she'll say, I was just playing with you. But nah, she meant that. She was like, yo, 18, you getting out. Okay, fine. I got out 18. I went to the Navy. Now I had to grow up, right? But I had male influences. I got to see people that look like me, because representation matters, right? I got to see people that looked like me that was doing the things that I wanted to do. So at the end of those 3 years, guess what? I could have got out, went back home. I was like, nah, I'm gonna stay out here because I have a foundation and I'm planning. And I was able to do the things that I needed to do, right? But had I not had that, let's say I didn't join the Navy, whatever. I didn't have that. I don't know what would have happened, because I know definitely I would not have been in her house. Period. And I love my mom and dad. No disrespect to my mother. I love her to death. I'm glad she did it. But at the same time, if you're not teaching your kids life skills, it's gonna hurt them.
Well, my guest. Yep, we didn't hit our time. Nick and Joe, hey, it's been our pleasure to have you on our show. I hope that the viewers have gained a new insight about home ownership and real estate, and that they share the same knowledge with others who may be struggling, or probably even in the market to buy or sell. So I will tell y'all, if you are that person that's struggling, please give these people a phone call or shoot an email to them. If you didn't get their information, hit me up and I'll make sure I get that information to you, because that's what the whole platform is about. We try to make sure that you get this information and you can actually, and we just putting it out there so you can understand what the process is. So, I'm gonna give y'all each one a little, if y'all got some parting words for the viewers. So Nick, you can go and start them off.
Thank you for having me on the show. Anthony and Stephanie, I really appreciate it. Just go out and seek out the information. Just remember what your end goal is, and then work every day towards that. That's all I got.
And Joe?
Yep. Again, thanks for having me on the show. I look forward to next week. I know we're going to deep dive into some more topics next week, but my takeaway, or my partners for the day would say, education is key. And if you're not clear on what it is that you want, be clear before you start. Otherwise, the process will be painful. Home buying should be enjoyable. It's one of the biggest financial investments of your entire lives. But you got to make sure that you're clear on what you want, what you can get, what's attainable, and then make sure that you have a trusted team of lenders and realtors that you can work with.
Gotcha. Miss Stephanie?
Yeah, and just piggybacking off Andrella, like, get real with yourself first. Have a realistic expectation of the process. Consult with a professional, get educated, explore your options, tap into the resources that are out there, kind of leverage this education to get you through the process. Yeah, and take advantage of this real estate market as it is today. There you go.
So next week, there will be a part 2 of this right here, and we'll talk about some of the things that was mentioned. We'll pick back up with Nick and not kicking your kids out of 18, and the reason, and we'll actually talk about the reasons why most people do that in the first place. We'll get on some generational wealth issues, and then we can talk a little bit about a financial portfolio. Nick mentioned a few times on that financial portfolio, and we can dive a little bit in to talk about what that financial portfolio really is. So, with that being said, I'll leave you with this. Parents, I humbly ask you to stop buying your children what you never had and start teaching them what you never knew. George Carl stated, one of the ways to chip away at a financial literacy problem in our country is to get to the kids early and let them develop positive behaviors and attitudes. So, with that being said, this is another edition of The Door. All right. Hey, thank y'all very much. And we out of here. Holla.
Hey, see y'all next week.
See you next week.
Bye. Bye.